It was a Tuesday morning in March when Sarah walked into her usual Ralph's on Wilshire Boulevard. She needed milk, bread, and chicken for the week. The parking lot looked normal. The carts were stacked by the entrance. The automatic doors opened the same way they always did. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed above rows of products she'd walked past 1,000 times before. Everything looked exactly as it should. She grabbed a cart and turned toward the produce section. The apples were there. The lettuce looked fresh. Bananas sat in their usual mountain near the organic section. She moved toward the bakery. The bread aisle stretched ahead of her, 40 feet of shelving on both sides. That's when she stopped. Half the shelves were empty. Not messy, not knocked over, just empty. Clean metal racks with nothing on them. She stood there for a moment, cart handle in both hands, staring at the gaps. There was bread, but only 3 types instead of 20. The store wasn't closed. The lights were on. Employees were working. But something had changed.
The grocery supply chain in Los Angeles operates on a principle called just-in-time delivery. Stores don't warehouse food. They receive it, stock it, and sell it within days. Fresh produce arrives multiple times per week. Dry goods restock based on computer algorithms that predict demand. The entire system runs on constant motion. Trucks leave distribution centers in Vernon and Commerce every night. They drive predetermined routes, dropping pallets at 24 stores before dawn. By the time customers arrive at 7 a.m., shelves are full. The store itself holds maybe 3 days of inventory in the back room. Everything else is still moving, on trucks, in warehouses, at ports. The food you see on the shelf today was on a farm in Salinas or a warehouse in Kansas 72 hours ago. There is no months-long reserve sitting anywhere. The buffer between normal and empty is about 96 hours. This system works perfectly when every link functions. Farms harvest, trucks drive, workers unload, shoppers buy predictable amounts. But it only works when nothing stops.
The first disruption wasn't dramatic. A distribution center in Commerce reported that 12 drivers didn't show up for their Monday night shift. The loads went out late. Stores opened with half-stocked shelves. Management assumed it was temporary. By Wednesday, the problem had spread. Processing plants in the Central Valley slowed production. Not stopped, just slowed. Fewer workers meant fewer pallets ready to ship. Ports in Long Beach saw container delays, not closures, just delays. Ships waiting an extra day to unload. Trucking companies reported driver shortages, not strikes, just absences. Each individual disruption was small, manageable. The system had handled worse before, but they were all happening at once. A delivery delayed by 6 hours in Commerce meant shelves weren't restocked before morning rush. A processing slowdown in Fresno meant less product available to delay in the first place. A port backup meant ingredients didn't arrive to process. The links were still connected, they were just moving slower, and the system was designed for speed, not slowness.
By the second week, shoppers began to notice patterns. Meat sections thinned first. Chicken breasts disappeared, though thighs remained. Ground beef sold out by noon. Pork sat untouched. Canned goods vanished in clusters. Tomato soup gone, but cream of mushroom fully stocked. Black beans cleared out while kidney beans remained. Toilet paper became the most visible absence. Entire aisles stripped bare, leaving only the shelf tags and empty cardboard displays. It wasn't random, it was category by category. The products that sold fastest disappeared fastest because the replenishment system couldn't keep pace with normal demand. Stores didn't order more, the algorithms did, and the algorithms assumed normal flow. They had no setting for half the supply chain is running slow. Employees started hearing the same questions. When's the next truck? Do you have any in the back? Is more coming tomorrow? They didn't have answers. The trucks were coming, just not full. The back room was checked, nothing there. Tomorrow's delivery was scheduled, but nobody knew what would be on it. Replenishment schedules meant nothing now. A store expecting 4 pallets of canned goods received 1. A dairy delivery arrived with half the usual milk orders and no butter. Produce came in short. Not rotten, not rejected, just less of it. The suppliers weren't failing, they were delivering what they had, and what they had was less than usual. Store managers made decisions they'd never made before. Limit signs appeared, 2 per customer, 1 per family. They weren't rationing for scarcity, they were rationing to slow the disappearance. If one person took 12 cans, the next 50 people got nothing. The limits created fairness, but they also created a new feeling, restriction. Customers who'd never thought about limits now saw them everywhere. You could buy chicken, but only 2 packages. You could buy rice, but only 1 bag. The shelves had always said, take what you want. Now they said, take what you're allowed. It was a small change, but it rewrote the unspoken agreement between the store and the shopper. Abundance had terms now.
For the first few days, people stayed calm. Lines were longer but orderly. Shoppers looked confused more than worried. They checked their phones in the aisles, searching for explanations. Some switched stores. If Ralph's was empty, maybe Vaughn's had stock. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes the next store was worse. Others adjusted their meals. No chicken? Buy fish. No pasta? Try rice. People adapted without panic. But confusion slowly became something else. Not fear, doubt. Every trip to the store required a new plan. You couldn't assume anything. Bread might be there, it might not. You learned to buy what you saw, not what you needed, because you didn't know if it would be there tomorrow. Shopping turned into strategy. People started going more often, buying less each time, hoping to catch restocks. Others went less, afraid of wasting a trip. The routine that had been automatic for years now required decisions, and every empty shelf reinforced the same quiet realization. The food wasn't guaranteed. It never had been. You just never noticed.
There was no announcement, no press conference explaining the delays, no official timeline for when things would return to normal. The absence itself became the only information available. People noticed it in different ways. A neighbor mentioned she couldn't find yeast for 2 weeks. A coworker said his usual grocery run took twice as long now. Social media filled with photos of empty shelves, but no explanations, just documentation. The system had always been invisible. Trucks arrived at night, shelves filled before dawn. Food appeared as if by magic. Now the magic had stopped, and no one knew who to ask why. You couldn't call the store. They didn't control the trucks. You couldn't call the supplier. They didn't control the farms. You couldn't call the farm. They didn't control the workers. The system was so distributed, so automated, that there was no single point of contact. It just worked, until it didn't. And when it didn't, there was no one to tell you when it would again. You just had to wait, and check, and hope.
The grocery system was built for efficiency, not resilience. Every cost had been optimized out. Stores held minimal inventory to reduce waste. Suppliers delivered just enough to meet projected demand. Trucks ran full routes to maximize fuel efficiency. Warehouses operated at capacity to minimize rent. There was no slack anywhere. No extra drivers sitting idle. No backup warehouses half full of reserves. No surplus production waiting in case of disruption. The system worked because every piece moved in perfect rhythm. When one piece slowed, there was nothing to absorb the delay. A missing driver meant a delayed truck. A delayed truck meant an understocked store. An understocked store meant empty shelves by noon. The efficiency that made food cheap also made the system fragile. It could handle predictable variation, a storm, a holiday spike, a local event, but it couldn't handle simultaneous slowdowns across every link. The buffer had been removed deliberately. It cost money to keep extra inventory. It cost money to have backup drivers. It cost money to hold surplus production. Those costs had been eliminated, and now the system had no room for error. By late spring, trucks began running on time again. Workers returned. Processing plants resumed normal output. Ports cleared their backlogs. The flow restarted, link by link, until the shelves filled again. Chicken reappeared, pasta restocked, toilet paper returned in full. Within weeks, the aisles looked like they always had. Customers stopped checking for limits. Employees stopped answering questions about deliveries. The system had repaired itself, the way it always did. But something had changed. People remembered the empty shelves. They remembered the confusion. They remembered not knowing if the food would come back. Some kept buying extra. Not hoarding, just a little more than before. An extra can of soup, an extra bag of rice, a buffer against the possibility of absence. Others stopped trusting the routine. They checked stock before making meal plans. They diversified where they shopped. They noticed delivery trucks in ways they never had before. The shelves were full, but the assumption of permanence was gone. The system worked again, but everyone knew now that it could stop. Today, the Ralph's on Wilshire Boulevard looks exactly like it did before March 2020. The shelves are full. The bread aisle holds 20 types again. The pasta selection stretches 40 feet. Toilet paper is stacked high. Delivery trucks arrive every night on schedule. The algorithms predict demand accurately. The system hums along invisibly, exactly as it was designed to. Customers walk in, grab a cart, and find everything they need. Most don't think about supply chains. Most don't wonder where the food comes from. The routine has returned, but the memory hasn't faded. People who lived through those weeks remember what empty shelves look like. They remember the feeling of walking into a store and not finding what they came for. They remember realizing that the food was never guaranteed. It was just likely, and likelihood isn't the same as certainty. The shelves are full now, but they were full before too, right up until the day they weren't. The system still runs on efficiency. The buffer is still thin. The just-in-time delivery model hasn't changed. Nothing was redesigned. Nothing was reinforced. It just started working again. And somewhere in Los Angeles, someone is walking into a grocery store, seeing full shelves, and remembering when they were empty.